Well, I got it all going on in this video. Let's see, the 8th, where the, Advent calendar. Gonna be reading from this. Wisconsin leads the nation in consumption of brandy. And this is the best brandy that I know of. It'll put lead in your pencil. Here's mud in your eye. Nyeh, nyeh, nyeh. Ran into my dental hygienist lady at Walmart, and I didn't have a channel chip to give her, or she probably wouldn't have watched anyways. And you don't want things to get weird when she's cleaning tartar off your teeth. Yeah, that's probably for the best. Worlds collide. The Blood Bay by Annie Proulx. The winter of 1886 to 87 was terrible. Every goddamn history of the High Plains says so. There were great stocks of cattle on overgrazed land during the droughty summer. Early wet snow froze hard so the cattle could not break through the crust to the grass. Blizzards and freeze-eye cold followed, the gaunt bodies of cattle piling up in draws and coulees. A young Montana cowboy, somewhat vain, had skimped on coat and mittens and put all his wages into a fine pair of handmade boots. He crossed into Wyoming territory thinking it would be warmer, for it was south of where he was. That night, he froze to death on Powder River's bitter west bank. That stream of famous dimensions and direction, an inch deep, a mile wide, and she flows uphill from Texas. The next afternoon, 3 cowpunchers from the Box Spring outfit near Suggs rode past his corpse, blue as a whetstone and half buried in snow. They were savvy and salty. They wore blanket coats, woolly chaps, grease wool scarves tied over their hats and under their bristled chins, sheepskin mitts, and 2 of them were fortunate enough to park their feet in good boots and heavy socks. The third, dirt sheets, a cross-eyed drinker of hair tonic, was all right on top, but his luck was running muddy near the bottom. No socks, and curl-toe boots cracked and holed. "That corned beef's wearing my size boots," Sheets said, and got off his horse for the first time that day. He pulled at the Montana cowboy's left boot, but it was frozen on. The right one didn't come off any easier. "Son of a sick steer in a snowbank," he said. "I'll cut 'em off and thaw 'em after supper." Sheets pulled out a bowie knife and sawed through Montana's shins, just above the boot tops, put the booted feet in his saddlebags, admiring the tooled leather, and top-stitched hearts and clubs. They rode on down the river, looking for strays, found a dozen bogged in deep drifts, and lost most of the daylight getting them out. Too late to try for the bunkhouse. Old man Grice's shack is somewheres up along. He's bound to have dried prunes or other dainties, or at least a hot stove. The temperature was dropping, so cold that spit crackled in the air, and a man didn't dare to piss for fear he'd be rooted fast until spring. They agreed it must be 40 below and more, the wind scything up a nice Wyoming howler. They found the shack 4 miles north. Old man Grice opened the door a crack. "Come on in, puncher or rustler. I don't care. We'll put our horses up. Where's the barn?" "Barn? Never had one. There's a lean-to out there behind the wood pile. Should keep 'em from blowing away or maybe freezing. I got my 2 horses in here, beside the dish cupboard. I pamper them babies something terrible. Sleep where you can find a space. But I'm telling you, don't bother that Blood Bay none. He will mull you up and spit you out. He's a spirited steed. Pull up a chair and have some of this son of a bitch stew. And I got plenty conversation juice, so wash it down. Hot biscuits just coming out of the oven." It was a fine evening, eating, drinking, and playing cards, swapping lies, the stove kicking out heat, old man Grice's spoiled horses sighing in comfort. The only disagreeable tone to the evening was from the Waddy's point of view, was the fact that their host cleaned them out, took them for $3.04. Round midnight, Grice blew out the lamp, got in his bunk, and the 3 punchers stretched out on the floor. Sheets set his trophies behind the stove, laid his head on his saddle, and went to sleep. He woke a half hour before daylight, recalled it was his mother's birthday, and if he wanted to telegraph a filial sentiment to her, he would have to ride faster than chain lightning, with the link snapped, for the Overland office closed at noon. He checked his grizzly trophies, found them thawed, and pulled the boots and socks off the originals, threw them onto his own pedal extremities. He threw the bare Montana feet and his old boots in the corner near the dish cupboard, slipped out like a falling feather, saddled his horse, and rode away. The wind was low, and the fine cold air refreshed him. Old man Grice was up with the sun, grinding coffee beans and frying bacon. He glanced down at his rolled-up guests and said, "Coffee's ready." The Blood Bay stamped and kicked at something that looked like a man's foot. Old man Grice took a closer look. "There's a bad start to the day," he said. "It is a man's foot, and there's the other." He counted the sleeping guests. There were only 2 of them. "Wake up, survivors, for God's sake, wake up and get up." The 2 punchers rolled out, stared wild-eyed at the old man, who was fairly frothing, pointing at the feet on the floor behind the Blood Bay. "He ate sheets. I knew he was a hard horse, but to eat a man whole, you savage bugger!" he screamed at the Blood Bay. And drove him out into the scorching cold. "You'll never eat human meat again. You'll sleep out with the blizzards and wolves, you hell-bound fiend." Secretly, he was pleased to own a horse. God. Secretly, he was pleased to own a horse that, with the sand to eat a raw cowboy. I'm sorry. Oh, Jesus. Okay, compose myself here. The leftover box spring riders were up and drinking coffee. They squinted at old man Grease, hitched at their gun belts. Ah, boys, for God's sake, it was a terrible accident. I didn't know what a brute of an animal that blood bay was. Let's keep this to ourselves. Sheets was no prize, and I've got 40 gold dollars. Says so. And the 3 and 4 bits I took off of you last night. Eat your bacon, don't make no trouble. There's enough trouble in this world without no more. No, they wouldn't make trouble. And they put the heavy money in their saddlebags, drank a last cup of hot coffee, saddled up and rode out into the grinning morning. When they saw Sheets that night at the bunkhouse, they nodded, congratulated him on his mother's birthday, but said nothing about blood bays or $43 and 4 bits. The arithmetic stood comfortable. Oh, man, I love that one. Chipper.